This is probably one of the most unique e-bikes you'll see this year. Sporting a large headlight and a retro bench-style seat, the YADEA Trooper 01 looks less like an e-bike and more like a mini Triumph Street Twin motorcycle. This is one of those bikes that's sure to turn heads, and it might even have people take a double look when they think, why is this motorcycle riding in the bike lane? With its 750-watt motor, this offers excellent power with very smooth delivery, making even those steepest hills feel effortless. Despite its more sophisticated looks though, it's a rather simple bike that has its share of limitations, but ultimately it is still fun to ride. That is, assuming you're either a shorter rider or you don't mind foregoing the pedaling experience altogether. Now, before getting into the heart of this review, a lot of the marketing with this bike would suggest that it's designed for off-roading. While its full suspension and 4-inch fat tires certainly make it more capable of handling bumpy roads and some dirt paths, this certainly wouldn't be my first choice for trail riding. Instead, I think the Trooper stands out more for its comfort and convenience for street riding. The seat is super plush, and the built-in underseat storage is great for holding your smaller items like water bottles and bags. Despite its bolder styling, the bike is deceptively small. On one hand, I found the bike surprisingly compact and very simple to get on or off, as well as easy to move around and even lift on my own. And that's not something that can be said about many other 750-watt e-bikes. On the flip side, at 5'10", I feel like an absolute giant riding this thing. The Trooper 01 provides excellent ride and plenty of punch, but once I try to pedal, it's a different story. Chances are pretty high if you're actually considering this bike at all, it's largely because of its bold styling. At first glance, this can easily be mistaken for a motorcycle, albeit a small one. It's not until you notice its pedals and chain that you realize this is actually supposed to be a bike, despite it hardly riding like one. I know I keep hinting at that, don't worry, I'll get to that. But aside from its rather unique looks, the Trooper 01 may leave you feeling a little bit underwhelmed. What do I mean by that? Well, it features an underframe built-in basket which is wide enough and deep enough to fit a few compact items like a smaller bag, which for smaller commutes, it was actually really nice to fit my water bottles and even a satchel for my iPad and even a few accessories without needing to carry them on my back. One thing to keep in mind though is unless your items are wide enough to sit snug in the basket, there's probably going to be a lot of rattling around, so be careful there. There is no way to add a rear cargo rack or a front basket either, not that you'd necessarily want one for a bike like this, but it's worth mentioning. Your controls are very straightforward with a thumb throttle lever on the right side with a rather basic and small monochrome display interface right above it, which allows you to change the power mode and see all those other cool settings. If YADEA actually wanted to lean more into this motorcycle heritage, which obviously it's trying, they should have actually gone with a twist throttle, but that's just my opinion. With higher priced e-bikes though, this is typically an area where we would find a larger and nicer color LCD for keeping track of all your bike stats and giving us some smart features too. And given its $2,000 plus asking price, I feel like YADEA definitely could have afforded a more premium option here. And like I said, they didn't splurge on any additional smart features like smartphone integrations or something that I definitely look for in most other e-bikes, turn signals. Moving on though, on the left there's a button for turning the headlight on or off, and below that a button for its horn, which although it was small, I found that it was positioned in a really great spot to reach with my thumb without needing to let go of the handlebar. Right away you'll also notice one other thing. This bike is missing gears. Having tested a few other e-bikes that also lacked this, I knew it would have its drawbacks, but I wasn't prepared for its true extent. The Trooper 01 is equipped with a 48-volt rear hub motor that delivers 80 Nm of power and 3 levels of pedal assist, eco, mid, and high. Power delivery is smooth and predictable, and thankfully it lacks that usual abruptness that you tend to find with bikes' motors either being on or off when you begin to pedal or when you engage the throttle. Yes, there's still that delay in motor assistance before the actual power kicks in, and it's certainly not as responsive as, say, a mid-drive motor, but it gets the job done with no major hiccups. Even in its high power mode, slamming down the throttle results in a graceful acceleration rather than that neck-slapping jolt. If you're looking for a thrill that'll pin you to your seat, yeah, this might not be the bike for you, but it certainly has the oomph to tackle those steep hills and even smaller inclines with ease, which for me is what I look for in my commuter bike. However, as I've continued to hint at, the dark cloud hanging over the Trooper 01's performance is its absence of gears. When combined with its nearly 80-pound curb weight, pedaling can be a real struggle here. If you want to try and start this bike from a dead stop by pedaling, you'll quickly realize the limitations of this bike. It's like you're in top gear when you really should be in first, only you can't shift down to make things easier. I often found myself relying on the throttle to kickstart movement before I'd actually begin to pedal. In terms of other features, it would have been nice to have cruise control as, again, you're probably not going to be pedaling very much given how difficult it is. You're mostly relying on the throttle to keep its speed, so my thought is why not just completely take the strain off our thumbs too and give us cruise control. The bike is equipped with Tektro 160mm rotor hydraulic disc brakes. They provide reliable stopping power, and when testing them I could come to a complete stop very quickly even from speeds of 20 miles per hour without losing balance or traction. Keeping the bike moving, we have a 48-volt 20-amp-hour battery that supports 3-amp fast charging. While theoretical pedal assist range is a generous 56 miles according to them, with how much I had to solely rely on its throttle only, I got a max range closer to 20 to 25 miles per hour, which is in line with what they claim. But again, it was pretty unfortunate to realize that I was basically having my potential range on this bike just because I couldn't pedal it as much as I wanted to. Alright, so let's address that elephant in the room. While this may not look much like one, this is still a bike, but only in the most technical sense. For most of my tests, I found myself riding the Trooper 01 more like a moped or a motorcycle. And in large part, that comes down to two major reasons. First, the bike's pedal placement feels very cramped to me. With its fixed saddle height of just under 2.5 feet, YADEA claims that this bike is best suited for riders between 160 to 180 centimeters or about 5'2 to 5'9. So at most this bike should feel maybe a little small to me, but instead I'm thinking YADEA has their sizing off by maybe 2 or so inches. In fairness, I might be at the higher end of the recommended height range, maybe even a little out of it, but I've even ridden kids' bikes which have felt more ergonomic. If I could raise the seat by maybe 3 or 4 inches, I'd probably be in good shape. But that's obviously not going to happen here with that fixed seat. As a result, instead of having that usual downforce power from my legs pushing the pedals below me, when riding the Trooper, my knees are actually positioned a little bit above my waist, dramatically reducing the output from my legs. Aside from its non-adjustable seat height, when combined with its lack of gearing, you're just setting yourself up for a tough time. Sure, once the bike is actually in motion, pedaling with the conjunction of motor assistance is doable. I suppose the pedaling helps take some of the strain off the motor and extends your range slightly. However, after about 14 miles per hour or so, there's absolutely no reason to pedal. At these speeds, the bike now feels like it needs a higher gear, as the pedal spins so fast that when you try to do anything, you're better off just using the throttle exclusively. And regardless of height, this is also a problem that shorter riders will encounter too, as it's a limitation of its single gear hub. And just to make myself very clear, regardless of height, this bike is horrendous to pedal without any power assistance. In fact, I'd go as far as to say that I'd actually prefer to get off and walk this bike instead of having to pedal it. Now, think I'm exaggerating? Well, in one of my earlier test rides, let's just say I miscalculated the bike's remaining battery life, and it ended up dying on me with about a mile left before I got home. And of course, while that would be annoying on any e-bike as you now have a dramatic drop in power, it was especially bad here. I could not reliably keep this bike moving faster than 5 miles per hour or so for more than a few minutes before tiring myself out completely. Not to mention, I look like an absolute fool trying to get this bike moving again after stopping at intersections. It took me less than 5 minutes before I decided, you know what, I'd just be better doing the walk of shame for the rest of the trip back home and walking the bike. As you can imagine, this did leave a very sour taste in my mouth, but I also came to a very important conclusion. So long as I treat the Trooper 01 as the motorcycle-like motor vehicle that is designed to emulate, things are great. I certainly love its styling, and I found that it comes very close to giving me that experience of a real motorcycle, but in a much more compact and of course power-limited form factor. So if I exclusively ride it with its throttle only and forget about its pedals, yes, I do take a big hit to its range, but I am also treated to an extremely torquey, comfortable, and effortless ride. So what if we don't call this a bike? What if instead we call it an e-motorcycle with a top speed of 20 miles per hour? Does that change things? I think in a lot of ways it does. So thanks again for checking out this review of the YADEA Trooper 01, a very interesting e-bike that doesn't really feel like an e-bike. For some users that might be cool. For others, you're probably missing out on quite a bit. Let us know your thoughts on this bike in the comments down below. Until the next one, we'll catch you later.